Hey, friends, and welcome to the Michigan's Best podcast. On today's episode, we are talking to Christy Buck. She is the executive director of Be Nice, and Ande Scherf, who is the director of human resources for the MLive Media Group and MLive.com. What are we talking about? We're talking about mental health. As I said, we start today's episode with executive director of Be Nice, Christy Buck. Christy, how are you today?
Hey, today I'm doing pretty good. Actually, the sun is shining. I walked outside and I picked some weeds just for a moment, and that felt really good. So I think I'm going to concentrate on doing that over the weekend. But overall, I'm pretty good.
Awesome. And we are talking about mental health, and I want to start with you and specifically Be Nice as an organization. This has been a weird year for everybody, but One of the things you and I were talking about moments ago is one of the core principles of Be Nice is the first one is notice. And I'm wondering, how has the organization changed in the last 14 months when I can only notice you like this, right? It's much harder for me to kind of read anything through a mediated screen. So how has that changed what you guys do?
What we've been doing is, back on March 13th, I think by March 16th, we had a team meeting and we knew that we had to readjust everything that we do because our work is primarily done in person. We provide mental health education, suicide prevention programming to schools, businesses, community, and faith organizations. And I think only 1 out of the 5 program folks had ever been on Zoom before, and that had been me recently. So we had to sit down as a team and recreate all of our materials, go out and discover what platforms we wanted to use to keep our information out there, because then actually more than ever, people needed that information about what do I notice in a person, the way our lives are changing right now. So, now, Eric, we're to the point where everybody's talking about mental health, right? But the bigger picture is, when does it become a mental illness? So I can talk about mental health until I'm blue in the face, but we need to be talking about when does it become a mental illness. And so even the way how we're functioning right now, believe it or not, there are ways that you can notice a change in someone's behavior. And that all starts with knowing the basics of what is good and what is right about someone, noticing the good, the right, so then I can notice the difference, right? And are they the same person that they typically are now, or were rather now? And so that would be through, these Zoom platforms and Microsoft Teams and all of these different channels that we use. Are they coming to meetings prepared? Are they able to concentrate? Are they getting their job done? Are you taking time as a coworker maybe to actually find out how they're doing in their own personal lives also? Because many clues can be given to you that way. And what I'm looking for, Eric, is changes in how they're working or going to school, changes in how they're carrying out daily activities, and changes in how they're engaging in satisfying relationships. So if you think about that big picture of mental health and how it changes, all of a sudden, someone's more angry, someone's more distant, they withdraw, they're not prepared at meetings, their concentration is off, their attitude is poor, their attendance is poor. I mean, that's what it is. That's what I'm looking for.
Sure.
And yet, a year ago, sure, everybody's lives were different. And we had to allow them a little time to adjust. But now we're coming back out, and I know we're going to chat about this too. Now I need to still be diligent. How are they coming out of all of this right now as we're entering into a world which I might be going back to work? My kids might be going back to school, right? All of these new things that are going to come my way.
It's this dance that I was telling you a couple minutes ago where you show up at events. Like the other night I was at my son's lacrosse game, and some people have masks and some people don't. And some people are okay with either way, and some people clearly are not. And so my question is, before we talk a little bit more about mental illness and the importance of noticing that in our friends and families and loved ones, it's this low level anxiety or malaise that you have when you show up at these events and you're not really sure what to do. And that anxiety can obviously manifest in a number of ways. But what can we do when we're showing up as you said, we're moving into what's next? We've got vaccination to 55%, which turns on a bunch of stuff in the state of Michigan so people can wander around more, but they show up at these social functions and they're not really sure what song we're dancing to. So what can they do?
Yeah. And this is why I love the Be Nice, this action plan, right? Notice, invite, challenge, and empower. And the first step is notice. And the first two steps of notice are notice the good and the right. Okay. And then you go into noticing what may be different. And right now we know the difference is the good, the right is that we slowly are progressing out of these things that have taken over our lives, right? The way we go to sports, the way we interact with other people. But the good, the right is that we're moving towards the ability to be outside more often with people, right? We know this. And there's a lot of people that follow these our restrictions diligently, and there's others that don't, right? But the good, the right is that we're all moving forward. And the good, the right is that we can still be around our kids. We can still go to sporting events. We can go outside. We can go to the store right now, right? And then the difference is, all right, if this is affecting my own mental health right now, and I'm noticing these differences when I go to these games and the way I feel, I've got to look within myself. What do I have within myself to cope with those things right now? You know what? I'm going to wear a mask. I'm going to stick a mask on when I'm around folks that may be masked. Okay. That probably helps us their angst, right? Or you know what? I'm not going to make my way over there for the moment. Right. You know, because this is how I'm feeling. But I think we all got to give a little bit, and everybody needs to give and take a little bit right now, you know, and that's being nice. Right. And that's what I hope right now is that people can take out of this looking at the good, the right. And I have to do that every day, Eric, man. You know, we are a nonprofit organization, and I just have to know that, you know, participation in things is low right now. Schools were very fearful to bring new programming in. We had a tough year, but the good, the right is that we're all still working. We're working harder than ever. But, you know, we just had to make changes, you know?
I will say one thing of many that is great about Be Nice is you guys have been doing incredible work the entire time. And you hit on this a couple minutes ago. It's never been more important, because while I am excited that we are talking about mental health in a way that seems a little bit healthier than we have, we still haven't gotten to the point, and I think you would agree with this, we still haven't really gotten to the point where we have destigmatized mental illness.
No.
Right. And I fear, and I'm sure your organization is working to make sure that this doesn't happen, that the long-term effects of this 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 months, we won't feel for a number of years. And so as people, you said notice, but when you're noticing over the long term, what are some action items that people can do to empower your friends, families, neighbors to take control?
Absolutely. And this is why this action plan is so awesome, because it's simple. All right. It's notice. Yeah, I've noticed. And sometimes people just stick in that box. Oh, I noticed that. I noticed they were really acting differently. All right. Next step is invite. Okay. And that's a tough step. And that's when you have that knowledge, I'm going to gain that confidence, because you know what? I have some definite, noticed pieces here about that individual. I'm going to invite myself to start a conversation. How do I start the conversation? Well, you go back to the action plan. Hey, Eric, you have not been coming to meetings prepared. Is everything okay? Because that's not you typically, right? Now, what I did, I pointed out what I'm noticing. You're not coming to meetings prepared, but I loaded him also with the good and the right.
Sure.
Because he does have great skills, and I've noticed that. Don't let those good, right things go unnoticed. But now I've got to really concentrate on noticing, telling him what I noticed that was different. I'm worried about you. And then you go into challenge. Hey, have you thought about accessing our employee assistance program? Maybe it's my coworker, right? Hey, you know what? I know there's some really good resources out there. I also know that, listen, if you want to get together outside of work, let's go, you know, sit down, go to whatever, you cellos, wherever.
Right.
Let's just chat. whatever, because a lot of times people just need that. Now, am I telling them that him or her, that you have a mental illness? No, I'm already destigmatizing it because I'm talking about mental health in the way of how somebody is thinking, acting, and feeling. I don't even have to bring up words. Hey man, I think you've got a mental illness. I don't need to say that. I'm looking characteristically at that person's behavior and what is different about how they typically are. Then, Eric, if I know there's some risk factors going on, which you better believe it, everyone has risk factors right now. And the top 2 risk factors for developing a mental health disorder are ongoing stress, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
stress from traumatic experiences that I may have in my life. And when you define traumatic experience, let me tell you what they are. Losing my job, working in a surroundings that I'm not used to, where I can get my job done. Okay. Moving, divorce, death of a loved one. All right. There's so many, but the biggest ones are stress. This is why we need to talk about stress, but I need to be watching someone if this stress is more than that, right? This is having an effect on them coming to meetings right now. They're so stressed out. They can't get their thoughts together. They can't finish a sentence. They can't keep up on their planner. They're not putting anything in the calendar. I mean, there's a lot. And I'll tell you that, like I said a moment ago, I have never been so busy on my job. And I'm experiencing that stress also, because it's like, how do I keep up? And that's where that empowerment piece comes in. And that is, okay, you know what? I got to go back to the basics. I got to sit down. I got to get a little organized. I got to write things down. And I did. I went out a year ago and I bought these little handy dandy, really inexpensive, 99-cent little.
Sure.
book.
Yeah.
And I'm just keeping notes. And that was unlike me, but boy, I'm able to reflect back. So I had to find something for myself to help me through what was really stressing me out. I still got a lot of issue because I'm in my house. I don't have my whiteboards and, my typical things, but you got to make adjustments in your life. But I've got to know, though, that if this stress is having an effect on me going to work, right, or going to school, carrying out my daily activities, and those things would be cleaning my house, taking a shower, returning phone calls, right? Getting outside to go for a walk. I mean, these things are all things that I need to be aware of, that, maybe it's bigger than that. And maybe I need to access some type of help, treatment. I know that right now we're opening up. It's amazing, right? And also we've got sunny days and we're getting outside.
Yes. Yeah.
But I'll be honest with you, the spring months, and actually when seasons are changing, that's an increased risk factor for depression and for suicide. And people often can't understand, how can somebody be depressed when it's sunny outside? I thought that's supposed to be good for your depression. Well, it's good when you're sad. It's good when you're vitamin D depleted, right? But for somebody that's actually struggling with the illness called depression, this means being more around people, the expectation that I'm going to be. And I'm already wanting to isolate myself. I already don't want to go outside. It's longer daytime, right? It's being around people that are self-medicating. And maybe that is one of the things that I do for myself in those summer months, because I'm around a lot of outdoor gatherings and things, In addition, there's some research that goes back to allergies and the effect that they have on your brain in general, and inflammation. It's kind of pretty interesting stuff out there. But this is the time period where I really need to be watching people's typical behaviors and the changes in how they remember thinking, acting, and feeling. Isn't that easy how I define mental health?
Kristy Buck, it is the executive director of Be Nice. Kristy, if people want to reach out to you, as I'm sure they do, what's the easiest way for them to get a hold of you?
It would be, for one, it's info@benice.org, and you can send us an email and we can point you in the direction to get some resources, or if you want to get involved. I mean, if you own a business that you're here today listening, if you're a principal, a teacher, whatever your role is, bring Be Nice, the action plan, the program into your business. I hope that I can come back and chat with you more, though. We've written a book, one of my good friends and I, and it is called Be Nice, a 4-step action plan to recognize depression and prevent suicide.
Kristy, you can come back anytime you like to. Have a wonderful week. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
And let's bring it now to Ande Scherf, who is head of HR for MLive and the MLive Media Group, and of course, a dear friend of the podcast. Ande, how are you, my friend?
I am doing okay. I think that is a loaded question in this day and age now, is how are you doing? And I think all the articles said, let's start answering that question honestly, right?
Yeah, well, I think that's a good place to start. And you obviously have had a year, I would say.
In this basement.
In that basement, you have had that year. But we're at this new interesting intersection for you, where in the state of Michigan, at least, we're at 55% vaccinated, and we can now begin the process of figuring out what coming back to work looks like. Yep. But I had this thought the other day, and I know you and I talked briefly, maybe a week or two back, of this. What does this look like when you haven't seen people for 14 months? How does this social norm sort of get back to normal with people who are vaccinated and not vaccinated, comfortable coming into the office, not coming into the office? How do you keep, you hear inclusion, and it's an important part of not only culture, but the workplace. And that word has all sorts of meanings, but specific to COVID, it's inclusion in a mediated and non-mediated sense when you have employees in both places. And I'd like to start there. And what are you seeing in workplaces writ large that are trying to figure this out?
I think what I've learned across the board is how every employee looks at work differently. So some people, I don't know that they can ever come back to the office. I don't know if the home situation will allow it, especially with the school situation is still not figured out. And we're dealing across many different states. And this is timely because I just came back from Ohio, my first work trip in 17 months, to get the office prep to return to the office. And so I'm taping off desks, I'm hanging up signs of social distancing, using hand sanitizer after touching the coffee machine, because we determined we can't take the coffee machine out or else there'd be a riot in the office. But as we talk to people, everyone has such a different viewpoint, and it's incredibly challenging as a company, as an HR person, of how do you reintroduce people to the workplace? Because I don't know if you've noticed this about yourself, but you and I are both like incredibly social people. We have good communication skills. I almost feel like a brain lapse sometimes when I'm in person with someone talking, not over Zoom, because this business interaction, I went out to lunch with the regional president, and I didn't feel like on top of my game socially, because there were social cues that I had to take back. And now we're going to tell people, okay, you can sit at this desk, but your person's got to be 6 feet that way. This person's got to be 6 feet that way. A desk that was intended for 10 can only have 4 people. And then who's going to come back? As we've talked to other HR colleagues across the board, they have offices that 30, 40 people, and maybe 5 are showing up, because those are the people that, they need to get out of the house. They need structure. And that was a big learning experience talking to people, is, they needed to build a routine. Like, I have to get up, I have to work out, I have to go to an office. So they found their own office to go to because they couldn't be at home. It's incredibly challenging to try to figure out right now. And we're trying to find the answers, but it really is just a mixed bag, because like I said, everyone has been so different about their workplace. And I think for years, we've relied on stereotypes of what we think the workplace should be. And we've now proven a lot of those, as you have talked about, a lot of those were just myths that, we said we needed to be in the office for 40 hours a week. We said we had to do Monday through Friday. And this has really shown us that there's many different ways that a successful work environment can look like.
Yeah, and that asynchronicity that you're speaking of, right? In my line of work, we talk a lot about in the social space, social media, that pieces of content show up asynchronously, right? I find out that you get married 3 weeks from the time it actually happened. So it's new to me, but old to you. And we have this weird social norm where I'm like, congratulations for the 21-day marriage that I missed in my Facebook feed, right?
Yeah.
And you now have this in the workplace where some people, like you said, have this rhythm where they want to come to a place. Some people don't. And then you're going to have meetings where it's you and me and 3 other people in a room with social norms and seeing each other and feeling the energy of the room. And then a 4th, 5th, and 6th person who are on a conference call, which we have done, but just not for this sustained duration and not as a near, as you indicated earlier, near permanent condition going forward.
Yep. And I think the other piece that is coming through loud and clear is the people that are working from home and the inability to shut it off. So, for me, I can go upstairs, and then to me, it's a different world. The basement is where, I'm getting my work done. I can go upstairs and try to shut it off. But of course, you have emails and things like that you normally would. Some people are really struggling. They need the separation of like, this is my office, this is my home. I can't mix these two. And so again, it just goes back to that uniqueness that every single person has. And I really, being in HR, it's hard to be like good friends with people because you have to have a separation between their personal lives, and we can't be best friends. So I've always had that approach with my career. So I never went to work looking for friendships. I enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed having a good meeting with somebody, getting stuff done, but I never went there for social norms. And a lot of people go there because that's their social activity for the day. They enjoy those adult conversations because they may be going home to 2 or 3 kids. They could be a single parent. Work is a sanctuary. I never looked at the office like that, but to talk to people where I miss the office, I miss the people. So it's great. Let's, we can figure out how to open back up. But is that office environment you remembered? It's not going to be there. We're not going to have, would we have 100 people in Grand Rapids at one point, at one time?
Yeah.
Could you ever imagine? We'll never have 100 people in there again. I mean, it's just, I never see that really happening again unless we had some sort of town hall. So there is this new normal, but it's almost like there was that SNL skit for Elon Musk. I don't know if you saw over the weekend where it was people being reintroduced at a party, and it's like, what do we even talk about? And everyone's go-to question was, what kind of vaccine did you get?
Right.
So it's just like, we're going to have this new water cooler conversation of this whole world that is just, going to come back to us very abruptly.
And there's this interesting anxiety, Andy. So my sister-in-law took a new job in the last 3 weeks, and she was talking the other day of like, they're opening up their office and she's not quite ready to meet them because she was onboarded virtually. And so this is like the showing up to school naked on the first day of school dream that you have continuously, because there's this anxiety that I don't really know any of these people. So I've got to do that onboarding almost all over again a month into the job. And I imagine in a, network or a business as large as ours, there's a lot of people. I mean, I can speak for myself. There's a lot of people I haven't spoken to in 15 months that I'm going to be thrust in to go, oh yeah, I remember you.
Yep. And with Zoom, especially because, we do the big meetings and you see some of the same people over and over again because, you're speaking, I'm speaking. So we're seeing each other. What I do miss is, I would travel around to the hubs a lot and I would just see people. It had nothing to do with business. They would just see me working. And then I could really count on probably getting a question or two from somebody when I was there because they were like, hey, because you're here, I want to ask you this question. Great. That's why I come here, just to build relationships. I don't see those people anymore. I see the kind of consistent theme. So I've really been trying to go out of my way to just check in with people of being like, hey, I haven't talked to you in 6 months. But it's amazing how quickly you lose track of people. But then on the flip side, also built some great relationships. I think you and I have talked more than we ever did the previous few years. And so that's been good. But I just worry about the people that I'm not seeing, I'm not talking to, and I don't have that interaction in an office. And they're just kind of hiding. And I don't want to say hiding. They're just not visible to me. And I got to go out and seek them out. And I've been trying to focus on that the last couple months of get to the people you haven't seen or heard from.
Well, I think for most organizations, no matter their size, if they've opted for that 15-minute or 30-minute stand-up on a bi-daily or a couple times a week, it's still very hard if you've got anything over 25 people in your organization to get all those people involved. And so, it's not so much a hiding, as you said.
Yeah.
It's just a law of numbers. And,
Yep.
I wonder going forward for you in the last, and like you said, you and I have spoken a lot over the last
Yeah.
14 or 15 months, but I've never asked you this. And so I'm wondering, what are you thinking HR looks like now that we have all of this new data about how people view work? What does your job look like going that direction?
Yeah, I think we use the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, as like a touch-all, and I think you've seen communications from HR, my boss specifically, on a lot of different programs that we're trying to roll out and trying to get more assistance. I think we've never talked about mental health as an organization more than we ever have. We just released this Summer Friday thing where take a half day once a month for Friday in addition to PTO, because we realize people need to recharge. We're forcing people to take PTO because people just haven't been taking it. People are working a lot and they're not being able to shut it off. And so it's almost gone from like, here are the policies, here's this, but it's really pushing people to get access and take advantage of the resources that we have available. And, we don't know the usage rates on some of this stuff, but you'd be amazed about how difficult it can be to get people to take their PTO, and it's like, we got to, especially reporters, they feel this sense of obligation to cover every single story. And right now it's a madhouse of information and new stories, like the CDC story today. They just drop that in our lap. And then we've got to, reporters got to respond and get stories filed. How does this affect local businesses? What does this mean to state mask mandates? Stuff like that. So it's always breaking news. And it's like, how do we get people recharged, refreshed? How do we get them comfortable in the work environment? I mean, we never had to worry about work environment. You just came to the office. We had a nice ergonomic chair for you. And we had a keyboard. We got 2 monitors. Well, we got people working from their kitchen tables. Their backs are hurting. Can we get the proper equipment? And so it's really gone into like this care mode of, are we taking care of you? What do you need? Tell us what you need. I think we asked in the last survey, we let people say like, what can we do? Do you want to talk to somebody? And so we've been making more proactive phone calls. So it's really shifted of like, here's your office space to, man, how do you work? How do you operate? What kind of setup do you need? Because I think, you're with your office back there, you're very comfortable. But
I'm never leaving, Andy. I'm never coming back.
Yeah. That's what I said. I'm like, you're going to drag me out of this basement before I get back. But, everyone is just different. And so I never had to worry about that. If you didn't like working from an office, it was like, too bad. This is America. This is where you go and work. That has changed overnight or in 17 months, and everyone's viewpoints are shifting. And I think that to add a little caveat to that is it's evolving. So somebody could have answered how they were doing working from home 6 months ago. They may hate it now. Somebody may have hated it 6 months ago and they love it now. So we keep doing these data points and the information keeps changing. And so it's getting harder to figure out, well, what do you do? So long story, long way of answering, but I think the role has just shifted to, we've always been about people and caring, but now we have to address individual needs about work styles and how you operate. And that's a new component that, wasn't really, we just gave you an office and you came in.
Yeah, I think that macro caring as opposed to or micro caring, I should say, instead of a macro caring, that we care for the organization and these things should help 80% of the workforce. Now you're looking at helping each individual person as they navigate through the different phases of a global pandemic, which leads me to the final question that I want to ask you. You've seen Google and Twitter and Facebook essentially say, look, you never need to come back in. We've got this all figured out. We're probably going to move away from these large-scale real estate investments. And I wonder, what do you think offices will look like? I mean, will we go back to, let's say, the 40s and 50s where everybody has a individual office space to give them some private space in a public space? Or do you think there'll be some sort of half measure between these open office environments, which, as you indicated 20 minutes ago, are quite the challenge right now, to some sort of segmented workspace?
Yeah, I think in some instances, some people will be remote for the foreseeable future just because we won't physically have an office. And I think a lot of companies are dumping their commercial real estate. what I am really interested in is, and there's another component of this too, open office environments, the least COVID friendly setups that you have. So we now have to retrofit those to be COVID friendly for the foreseeable future. So that's another component as well too. The Buffalo News, they just redid their offices. They reopened, but they did them with like vestibules, more closed spaces, higher walls. They did a huge investment so people could get back sooner, but they had to completely shift away from an open office setting. So again, you look at local companies have built a business on open office environments, which is now shifted. So I see it as a hybrid, but I also see that there is a place for the office. I mean, people want to get together. They want to have meetings in person. They want to go to lunches. They want to have a social aspect of it, and they need structure. And an office does provide that. What I really like is those incubation spaces. They're good for startups, but I think there's going to be a middle belly, like, we work, but for organizations that
but highly functional, you mean?
But highly functional and not based on a scam. But there's, you could have 40 employees in Grand Rapids have access to that space at any point. There hasn't really been a middle market for that. We've done situations like that in Saginaw and Bay City in our smaller offices where we've taken advantage of that. That's really nice because we've got an expense issue too. Companies do is like, utilities, cleaning, all that stuff. And going to a third party is kind of an interesting thing. And so I've been talking to other HR directors about what they're doing. I talked to somebody the other day. In April, they finished their $20 million office building for 400 employees. And now they're not going to go back until 2022. And they're never going to go back for 400 employees. I mean, that's real money that they spend.
Yeah.
And so I think the one thing I've really learned is flexibility. Like if we've learned anything is people need flexibility, especially during a pandemic. But I think we got really sensitive to other people's flexible needs of, daycare, parents were sick. The other thing we talked about mental health in this is life still happened outside the pandemic. We had grandparents die, we had parents die, we had weddings, we had all this stuff happen to us. We had personal situations that happened, and we had to carry a pandemic. And I think we came more in tune with, let's just be flexible. Okay, you got to go get the kids from school. You got to take off at 9 because you got to run the kids to school because your husband's working another job. Go do it. Do we have to have you in the office at 8:01 or else, you're tardy? I think we've learned that we don't need that. So I just am going into this as like, let's make it work. Let's have individual conversations that we never had before. And let's find something that works for everyone. But it's a colossal amount of work.
It is. And which, this is sort of where I want to wrap this up. How are you doing 15 months into this? Because you are sort of the tip of the sphere of figuring all of this out and looking all of the data and going, okay, open office environments, I don't know, what does that look like? So how are you doing?
I think, like I said, for me too, life happened. So bad stuff happened during a pandemic too, with, like I said, deaths, personal situations as well. And then you have this pandemic, and then you have this work that is really looking at you for positivity and light and all of this stuff. And so I think I'm very happy that we are talking about mental health as openly as we are, and that we're giving people an avenue to share, because I've had good days, and I've had bad days, but it's been an open journey. And I think, the one thing I've learned is, I think I expressed it early on, is a gratitude for my situation. Is I have a roof over my head. I reaffirmed, this pandemic told me I married the right woman, because I think a lot of people, had realized maybe they didn't marry the right person, because this pandemic, if you had problems in your marriage and you had to stay home with somebody for 17 months, it really would have shown that. So it reaffirmed a lot of, things that I felt very important about. But, bad stuff just happened, and you have to add it on top to a whole list. So I'm doing as good as I possibly can. I try to stay positive, and I try to, keep looking forward and I do feel good that things are opening up. You and I both went to Mexico on separate trips. I mean, to get on an airplane, mask me up, wrap me in bubble wrap, do whatever you got to do, but just to get out of the house. But then it's also made me appreciate my home life. Like I kind of enjoy being home a little bit more. So it's overall, I'm very gracious, and I'm glad. I was actually able to spend a lot of time with my wife, and we had a good pandemic, for the most part, while still managing life's challenges like anyone else. So I'm being in the office and seeing people in an office in Cleveland this week was kind of exhilarating. I told my wife, I got behind the wheel of the car, and I mean, how much I used to drive for work.
Yep,
And I was like,
yeah.
yes, like I'm on the road again. I probably haven't driven more than an hour or so. And I had like 5 hours to listen to podcasts and, drive to Cleveland, stay in a hotel and, eat out again and in a different city. And it was like, almost like old times, but yet still weird in a way. It's just like getting that normalcy is hard.
It is, but I will say that you have been a rock through all of this, and we are highly appreciative that you are in our corner, my friend. So, Andy, I will thank you for your time and say
Thank
we'll
you,
talk
buddy.
to you soon.
Yep,
See you, bud.
Talk soon.